Ladies and gentlemen, it's kicking it with the belt guy. It's me, the belt guy. There's the belt. Here's the guy. That's how that kind of gets together. Episode 14, another week just at it. Today, we are coming with a subjectively objective kind of an output here, where our guest today is a fan, Giants fan from Jersey, but also has a job that I'm assuming requires some level of objectivity. So it's going to be really interesting how he balances this, but I'm going to let him speak to himself, how he got into this world, who he is, and how he manages that, again, objectivity from his personal life and his professional life. So let's go ahead and bring in our good friend right here. Let's go ahead and bring Jason into the fold. Jason, how are you doing, man?
Oh, doing well. Thanks for having me.
No, man, I appreciate you taking out the time, being here. Just, kind of bring in your opinion. Like I said, I think it's interesting because I don't know a lot of Giants fans that probably have the personal career you have that we kind of get to interact with. So it's going to be kind of interesting to really, figure out how does one, number one, how does one get into this world, but one, how does one balance said world? Again, objectivity. So how do you, how do you separate those things? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You know, football kid growing up. How did you end up in this space? Now you just recently told me you're from Teaneck, New Jersey, so that's definitely part of it. And I want to give a quick shout out to Darius, coaches in the house, people just in the house, spending their time coming to watch. So tell me how you got into football, man.
Oh, as a young kid, my mother, she actually bought me, I guess I was about 6 or 7. She bought me a Giants helmet and a Jets helmet, believe it or not. And I think I just threw away the Jets helmet. For some reason, the Giants, that helmet, I was hooked.
Oh
And
man,
then, as
funny.
a kid, watching the Giants on CBS with Pat Summerall and
Sure.
John Madden, that was everything growing up. I'm going to show a little bit of my age right now. The first Giant game I vaguely remember was the 84 divisional playoff game against the 49ers.
Okay.
They lost. But the 86 season, man, that first Super Bowl, I remember just about every detail. So I've been a Giant fan through and through. Um, the first game actually I went to in person, because unfortunately my family didn't have season tickets, was the 2000 NFC Championship game.
That's the first game you ever went to.
The first game I ever went to. Yes,
What a,
believe it or
what
not.
a game. Tell me a little bit about that experience. Right? So you've been a Giants fan your whole life. You get to see two Super Bowls live, right? Here's another one that's kind of rolling a little bit. Giants in 2000 were, I don't think they were pegged to do much. They weren't really, I would say, anticipated to be making noise or making a run, right? Kerry Collins was kind of on this whole fringe type, stopgap type scenario happening when they even signed them, to be honest with you. And then you go to the game where I would say, from a one-sided perspective, that's probably just one of two games, or maybe three. I would say, because there was that Super Bowl against the Broncos, the second half, they just kind of, poured it on. That was a run. But if you talk about meaningful playoff games, that one's one of the two or three where it was just dominant.
Oh, without question, from start to finish. And how I got the ticket was a little funny. There was a store in Bergenfield that had a certain amount of tickets available. So I called out late to work. I forgot the excuse I made. I think I said I have a doctor's appointment. I made sure I was on that line like at 7 a.m., hours before that store opened. And luckily, I was able to get a ticket. And I was there, man.
What was that like? What was that like?
Oh man, it was
So actually, take me a step back. What was it like So you're excited. You're going to the game. Now you're thinking about the actual matchups. Do we have a chance? How are we going to do this? What was your anticipation or thinking before taking on that Vikings offense, which was a bit of a juggernaut, right? I mean, stacked, absolutely stacked.
without question, Randy Moss, Chris Carter, Robert Smith,
Pepper, yeah.
Dante Culpepper. I was a little nervous, to be honest with you, because the weather was actually good that day for January in New Jersey. It was actually good, so you figure that would help Minnesota's passing game. But on the contrary, it helped the Giants' passing game. I mean, that was the best Kerry Collins ever looked. Ike Hilliard and Amani Toomer were amazing. Joe Jurevicius. And I never thought we would actually shut out the Vikings.
Yeah.
I know obviously Strahan, Michael Barrow, good defense, but you would never think they would actually shut out Minnesota. And sure enough, the crowd was electric, man. I mean, everybody's waving their white towel. It was a unbelievable experience. For my first game, couldn't pick a better one.
Yeah, I mean, if we go to that 2000 game, they had, touched the playoffs here and there, but they didn't really get far. They didn't make a lot of noise, right? There's a lot of dead times after that second Super Bowl. So I'm sure fans were starving for something, and this kind of felt like, okay, maybe something. Now, I all got bulldozed immediately and 2 weeks later, um, but at the same time, that's a really cool first game to ever go to, right? So I've only been to one playoff game. It was the Giants Falcons 24-2 game. The year they went to the Super Bowl, part of that run, that was that home game they had. But it's just a different experience, man. It's electric when it's that one sided because the crowd is just on their feet. They're just in it the whole way. It's not so much the anticipation of, I don't know. It's more like yeah, we're just beating the crap out of people and this is fun. This is just fun.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's high fiving one another.
Yeah.
I accidentally hit somebody that accidentally hit me, but we're all cool. We hugged each other
Yeah,
out.
yeah, absolutely.
So it was unbelievable. And a funny fact, you say you were at the Atlanta game when they won 24-2.
Yeah.
That was actually the first game my niece saw.
Oh, nice.
Actually, I took her there as a graduation present to her first Giant game.
What a gift, man. So uncle and niece so far have gone to some great first time games that you could just put in your memory bank because you're a part of something at that point, right? It encompasses that, for her at least, it definitely encompasses that whole Super Bowl run. So I personally always tell myself I'm part of the reason we won, right? Because you're a fan, right? You make more, you enjoy it more. Like, if I wasn't there, I don't know if the game goes that way. Obviously it does, but it's just more fun and more of an enjoyable moment to stick to something, right? Add that connection to it. So that's your first game. Tell me a little bit about your journey into your professional life. How did your love for the game influence you in any form, or is this just something you want to always do as a kid? Tell us a little about what you do professionally, number one, and how did you end up taking that journey into said profession?
Oh, it was really a crooked path to get there. It was definitely not a straight path. I tried accounting. I tried criminal justice in college. I was
Good job
very
with accounting.
undecided.
I have a degree in accounting, so good.
Oh, nice, nice, nice. So I was really, struggling like what path to take. But I always loved to write. Even going back as far as high school, I had a great English teacher, Miss Goldstein, 11th and 12th grade. So I always loved to write. And just so happens, one day I'm at a sports bar, and a friend of mine introduced me to this guy who was the owner of the Harlem Times newspaper at the time. And we just began chatting away. And I just asked him, hey, you guys need like a sports writer? And sure enough, I began freelancing for them and writing full time. My first gig for them was the Big East tournament. Then I covered some boxing. And then lo and behold, I reached out to the Giants about obtaining credentials. And sure enough, a few months later, I'm at the Giants and Jets preseason game. And that was my first Giant game as a member of the media.
Okay.
Which was
and what year are we going into now? When did that Harlem Times opportunity begin for you?
that was 2013.
Okay,
2013.
so 2013. So you've been in this for a decade now, right? So you're seasoned, I would say. That's a long time in any profession. So you get into that. You start freelancing. Freelancing leads to the coverage. Coverage leads to the credentials. All works out, and boom! Now you're in it a little bit, right? Now you're getting really, really in. And you said your first coverage was the preseason game, Jets and Giants.
Right, 2013.
Was that the bloody Eli Manning game?
No, that was
Eli Manning game, was it?
No, that was 2010, the bloody Eli
Right.
game.
Okay.
I think this was the first time they introduced it as the Snoopy Bowl, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh God, that was such a. I still don't understand why or how what the reasoning behind Snoopy was exactly. I don't know. I always found that to be odd.
Yeah, very odd.
Yeah, I don't know where Snoopy comes into play here. Like, where's Peanuts? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a very good question. We need to find out one day.
Okay, so now you have this profession that you're pursuing. You're covering the Jets and Giants. How did that feel? Now you're covering one of the teams you grew up watching, a team you're a fan of. How cool is that kind of experience of being able to kind of now mold your personal life and your professional life together?
Oh, it was very cool, and blessed for the opportunity because to be able to cover the team that you root for as a kid and being welcome with open arms, going to their facility,
Sure.
access to the players and the media. It was a privilege, but also I knew I had a job to do as a professional. Like
Sure.
I didn't want to come across obviously as a fanboy. You want to be
Yeah.
objective. You also don't want to be too negative. That's just me. And so it was a bit of a challenge at first, but then I just got with the flow. Discovered my style of writing and how I wanted to cover the team, and went on from there. Like I said, I have a model. I'm fair but firm. So
Yeah, fair enough. So in your profession today, you currently work with Sportsnaut, I believe, is one of the platforms you mentioned, right? You
right.
work at Sportsnaut, and how? So tell me a little bit, because again, I'm ignorant to how this journey works and how you get here and what all that encompasses. But you're also part of the Pro Football Writers of America. How do you get there? How does one become a writer there? And what does that encompass? What does that really mean for those of us who watch? And we've heard, oh, so and so Pro Football Writers of America. What does that mean exactly?
Well, you submit an application to be a part of Pro Football Writers of America. They look at your past work
Okay.
and they either accept you or they decline you. As a member, you're given extra information, inside information regarding certain teams and also other teams, all 32 teams across the league. You're also part of the voting process for the awards for players and coaches. So it's a esteemed honor, um, and also shows that they appreciate the work you do, and think you go about it in a professional manner. So it truly is an honor.
So when you now have to, are you at Sportsnot? Are you dedicated to any specific coverage? What do you cover exactly, right? So if we're talking about your writing, what are you covering as your profession today between Sportsnot and again pro football? What is your coverage area? What is it that you're, I would say, either asked to do? Is it just everything, certain specific things? What's the style here?
It all depends on the editor. A lot of times they do give me a free range. Sometimes they want a certain topic, or they may want me to actually interview a certain player, or to give my opinion, or what's going to come, like my foresight, what's going to come next. So I do have a wide range of where I can go, but it's also up to the editor what they want at that time because Sportsnaut, it is a national publication. So they definitely want like the trending names, Saquon, of course, um, which is a little different than when I worked for a local company. So that's pretty much how it goes with Sportsnaut.
So speaking of Saquon, again, here we go. Very interesting, right? What was again? This has been like 9 months of this or 10 months of this because we can take it all the way back to
Too long.
beginning of the season when people knew that this was upcoming and was going to happen. Then you had the whole not signing the deal at the bye week, but it was offered. That's really, I guess, where it really started. I guess that's the point everyone goes back to, right? You were given the contract, they wanted to sign it at the bye week, couldn't make it work, had the roller coaster, finally got a deal done yesterday, which I think is a huge, huge, huge deal for so many reasons. It's probably an unnecessary distraction nobody wanted.
Right.
Um, you don't want Saquon unhappy. He is a big, big part of this team, whether anyone likes it, doesn't like, whatever the case is. He's important. So there's all those different little pieces. That being the case, when you were covering the Saquon topic, how did you feel about it 9 months ago, 10 months ago? How do you feel about that journey, and how do you feel about it today?
Well, I always knew it was going to be tough because, unfortunately, the running back, they're being devalued. That's just a way of life. That's the NFL life. It's all about the passing game now. Teams feel you could actually win a Super Bowl with a low round draft pick, just as the Chiefs did with Isaiah
Yeah.
Pacheco. So I really got nervous when they drafted Eric Gray, to be honest with you, because I'm like, oh, a fifth round pick. I think he was the 10th overall running back taken,
Mhm.
but I knew they liked him. So I'm thinking, okay, Saquon might get the franchise tag because getting Daniel Jones a contract was the priority.
Sure.
So all in all, I think Saquon handled it as well as he could. He's obviously frustrated. He doesn't want to get franchise tag,
Of
and
course.
he's realistic. He knows his injury history. If he tears his ACL again, or God forbid suffers an Achilles injury, his value goes down even further. And he knows this is probably his last time to get a lucrative deal as far as NFL terms goes.
Sure.
So yeah, it was difficult, but I think all in all, the Giants did what they had to do and what they should have done, which give Danny Jones the extension and give Saquon the franchise tag, and hopefully next offseason they could come to a deal,
What do you
perhaps a
think?
two or 3 year deal.
What do you think happens next offseason? Again, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. So, what happens next season, right? Because they can franchise him again, if
Right.
so be it. What do you think the path is going forward now for both sides? Because we've heard a little bit from both sides now that this is kind of done. You get to speak, a little bit more freely, positively, while keeping information in house. And again, you probably have information that we don't. So, without compromising any of your actual professional side of it, what do you feel like is going to take place next season with the same scenario?
To be honest with you, I believe they're going to give him the franchise tag again,
Mm-hmm.
regardless if he has 1,500 yards rushing. It doesn't matter. I feel like he's going to get franchise tag again and get
Mm-hmm.
his, I believe it will be 12.2 million.
Sure.
Now, this time, I think he'll be a little more aggravated and will actually sit out at least some of training camp, if not all. Um, so it's even possible, depending on how bad it goes, maybe he asks for a trade. I would be nervous. Let's say they're going to week 17 this year and the Giants have a playoff spot wrapped up where they can't move up or down.
Sure.
And let's say Saquon's 50 yards away from rushing, from getting 1,300 yards to get
Sure.
that extra bonus.
Yep. Yep. Got to hit
But
that
they rest
incentive.
him
Oof.
and he doesn't get his bonus. That could be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Where
So,
he's
do you think the end game is franchise tag, goodbye? That's what we're trying to get out of it, or do you think the end game is franchise tag? We're working on a middle ground, can't find it. Market franchise tag again, because market probably isn't going to change in a year. For being honest, right? It's not going to just change overnight, especially with the CBA. CBA doesn't change overnight, so we franchise tag. Is a franchise tag the second time for? All right, we couldn't make it work last time. Let's make it work this time, or is it just franchise tag for the sake of we're happy to get the 1 year out of it? I'm not trying to insinuate otherwise, but what do you think the path from the Giant side or from Joe Shane and company side is? What is their end goal here? Is the end goal long term, 3, 4, 5 years, or is it really just we'll just kind of see how this goes?
to some extent is see how it goes.
Okay.
For example, if he has 1,500 this year and they may work out a 2 year deal next year. But in all honesty, if you want my honest opinion,
Yes.
he'll be a Giant in 2024. He'll be with another team in 2025.
Okay. So
Because
you're
I think he'll obviously play the franchise tag this year and
mhm.
in 2024. And then unfortunately, he'll be with another team in 2025.
So he's 25 or 26 now.
He's 26, so he'll be 28 in
Okay. It'll be
2025.
age 28 going into 29 season. You can still get a 3 year deal out of that, man. It's not like he's over the hill at that point. I mean, barring, of course, any injuries, he has to stay healthy, right? So if even this year any injuries come in, you know, it's going to be real. And here we go, same thing a lot. Barkley has no protection against injuries. That's the biggest thing, right? Especially as positions, injuries such a big deal. I was actually excited about the Eric Gray pick. That's probably my most underrated, exciting pick because I don't think the Giants have had a better RB2 in a while. They actually drafted, have cost control over, in that sense. So, I mean, I was hoping Saquon was going to be here, which he is. So let's see how that goes. I mean, he looked great today. I mean, wants to be with the team, wants to be with the grind. What does it say for a player who can hold out, probably should hold out to make a point, but decides that, you know what, it's going to be what it's going to be. I don't want to hold out. I'm here to grind for my teammates. What does that say to the locker room? What does that say to the players? What does that say to the media writers? What does that say as Saquon as a player in person?
Shows he has very high integrity and that he's a true team first player because obviously nobody would fault him if he sat out all or most of training camp. Like I thought he wouldn't report until around their final preseason game, August 26th. But it shows that he loves playing football and he loves being with his team and the organization. Um, and also, it in public opinion, I'm sorry, public perception of him went up. I mean, how could it not? The way, I mean, again, there's no protection from injury, but he decided to show up. I mean, we've seen training camp injuries happen at any time. It can happen to him,
Sure.
but he said, "Hey, I want to play," and you know, now you have to be even more optimistic about the team going forward week one. Now that they have all the pieces intact.
Yeah, I mean, you got the a big piece that's gonna keep other defenses honest. Like, I mean, there's a big difference when the eyes are looking back and they see Saquon versus an Eric Gray. Because as much as I like Eric Gray as an underrated pick, he's never played it down in the NFL. Um,
Precisely.
yeah, and same. I mean, I don't want to see Gary Brightwell back there. I'm okay. I'm lukewarm on Matt Breida. I like him as a change of pace, give him a spell, but I wasn't in love with Matt Breida to the sense of every down back type scenario. I guess what I'm going at. They can be produced, but not every down back. Saquon is your every down back.
Yeah,
So
Mike Breida may not even make the final roster.
I don't
We'll
think he
see.
does either. I am also. We're starting to have this weekly conversation, and Matt Breida is becoming more and more of a question mark, simply because in my opinion, the day he was drafted, Gray was already RB2. That's my opinion. I just thought he was RB2 to slot in right there. You got Saquon, you got your RB2. Gary Bright gives you special teams. Are they going to carry 4 or 5 running backs? It's hard to kind of fathom what they're going to do there unless is Breida going to be returning kicks or punts? Because that's what Brightwell's already doing, unless he, gets beaten out by somebody else. But I'm not sure. So I'm gonna. So Darius says Matt Breida is making the roster. Let's not do this. I think it's an actual legit conversation, Darius. Either him or Brightwell. I can see either of those two. But the reason Breida keeps coming into the conversation is simply based on the fact that Brightwell gives you special team snaps, and that special team still needs to hold together. And I don't know, man. 3 running backs seems to be about right. I don't know. I'm with you. Breida becomes a question mark almost a little bit by the week.
And
Um,
also, what some teams do, they actually will cut a player because, hey, we really don't have a spot for you on the roster. We'll cut you so you can sign somewhere else and get playing time. Sometimes coaches do that out of respect. And
sure,
that could happen
you're
for Matt Breida.
grinding. Yeah, we're grinding. We don't want to hold you back. If there is something you're looking forward to and all that, yeah, no problem. We'll help you out in that scenario. So the draft happens. How do you feel about year one Shane draft, year two Shane draft, and just the overall picture? How are you feeling about this GM and how he operates in comparison to the past two GMs? Now we had Dave Gettleman, which more or less everybody hated for their respective reasons, or I wouldn't say hated, but just not a fan of. Right? You're gonna be hard pressed to find Dave Gettleman fans exactly. And
Very
then
hard pressed. Yeah,
yeah, and even before then, I don't know. Reese was like, I would say his last maybe 6, 7, 8 drafts. It was just trash. It's not like Reese was actually killing it or anything. And I don't get too crazy about guys nailing first round draft picks, especially if they're high. I don't get too crazy about it. Like, oh my god, somebody tweeted today that Dave Gettleman guys just got contracts. The second pick, the fourth pick, and the sixth pick. I mean, am I really gonna be jumping up and down that he nailed 3 top 6 picks or something? And then
exactly.
and even in Daniel Jones' case, and I'll even bring up Dexter Lawrence here, until the right coaches came in to put him in better schemes, it's not like they were doing much. It's not like it was strictly the selection itself.
And let's not forget DeAndre Baker,
Oh my
who was
god,
up to get. So,
God, that was
and the one thing I will say about Jerry Reese, he made some bad picks,
sure,
but he also had some bad breaks. I mean, I know he built the team from the outside in as opposed to inside out.
sure.
But a lot of players, key players, had career-altering injuries. You look at Hakeem Nicks, Victor Cruz, Kenny
Kenny
Phillips,
Phillip,
Terrell
yes,
Thomas. Um, so I mean, those players they showed they at least showed at minimum flashes that they could be a big time player. The
sure,
case with Terrell Thomas and Kenny Phillips, and obviously Nicks and Cruz.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Even Aaron Ross. I mean, I mean, time came, right? Knees, ankles, all kind of caught up to him. Yeah, you're right. And especially in the wide receiver direction. The wide receiver direction, the Giants have never had a guy more than like 4 or 5 years really kind of sustain a Giants career than the elite guys you already know, like Toomer, and that's probably it. Like as far as long term, everybody else that's really really good, you get like an X amount of years for, and then you kind of get robbed, right? Steve Smith as a rookie, you were like, yes, injury.
Perfect
Victor
example.
Cruz, you were like, you know what, future 4 years, I think, injury. Plaxico Burress, we all know what happened with that, even as a free agent. Hakeem Nicks, vice grip hands, dominant as a one, injuries, right? We just haven't been able to have that guy for like a decade to say this is just our mainstay person. Odell, talent, didn't work out, right? So we haven't really got lucky in the wide receiver long term department just yet. So I'm hoping that part kind of turns around. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
hopefully Jalen Hyatt could break the trend. He's
Yeah,
promising. He's a speedster. I wouldn't expect that much from him this year as far as volume of catches. Maybe have about 30 to 35. They'll probably design a few plays for him here and there, but they'll probably average about maybe 17, 18 yards per catch, which is something the offense desperately needs. A big
you'll think it'll be that low, like 2 catches a game type scenario? Because I would say I'd probably end up expecting just a little bit more. Maybe I'm wrong in that expectation. I'm with you too. I think he'll be a sub package guy. He'll get moved around because he's a chess piece, right? And that's how you want to use chess pieces. And I don't think he's the every down guy just yet. Maybe he ends up being that, but I think. I mean, I'd be a little bit surprised if it was in that 30 to 35. I'd be hoping closer to like maybe the 50 ball range where you're getting like 3 a game.
I mean, it could. It's just that there's so many people you figure Jones will target ahead of him. Obviously, yeah, Darren Waller, Darius Slayton.
Darren Waller needs to see like 100 to 120 targets. I
Yeah,
mean,
you got Hodgins.
yeah,
Eventually, Shepard and Wandell will be back in the mix.
sure.
And you have Bellinger. I think he's going to have a big second year. I can see the Giants using him and Waller in double tight end packages. And of
Yeah,
course, you have Saquon, who's going to catch, at least 50 passes. So it's like, that's why I say for Hyatt, my personal belief he'll get like 30 to 35 receptions.
sure. And that's just based off of maybe a little bit of, and it's interesting. Giants went from we have no weapons to now do they have too many? And I'm not saying necessarily quality wise because there is quality. Some of the names you rattled off to me are quality. Waller, Bellinger, Hodgins, Slayton, Barkley, all quality people. And that's not even including, like you said,
Paris
Hyatt,
Campbell, we forgot.
Wanda, Paris Campbell. That's what I'm saying. So did they? Is the quantity too much here? Like who actually makes the roster? Right? They've got like 16 wide receivers right now. They just signed Cole Beasley. So give me a little bit about that.
Another name we forgot.
Yeah. So do you think Cole Beasley was a camp body, i.e., Shep's not ready, Wandale's not ready? Is that why we're bringing him in, or is there actual traction to this? Do we see Cole Beasley on the 53? What's your thoughts on that signing?
Yeah, no, I think they actually want him on the team. If I remember correctly, I believe they were close to acquiring him last year. So I definitely think he's going to be a staple with the team this year, barring an injury to him.
Sure.
He's one of those shifty receivers, which is a pain to cover in the slot. Like you ask corners, they hate covering those type of receivers. Like he's not as good as Edelman, but that type of receiver who just
Sure.
zig and zag and can get open, which is a big plus, especially on third downs. Like the Giants are going to be so much better this year, especially like on 3rd and 5 and less, because they have a ton of options. I mean, it's really going to be fun to see how dynamic this offense can be with all these weapons.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cole Beasley is here, so David Sills finally won't be here. Is what David Sills is the training camp warrior, preseason warrior, and that's
Training camp MVP.
yeah, he is right. I think he had a really good day today too. But it's kind of ridiculous how good he is in this phase or time of year. And again, he got a couple starts, but obviously didn't translate to much for him. But yeah, I think with the amount of people on the roster, I just how does David Sills even make the roster? I don't know. I don't see that happening. I don't even know if they're gonna put him on the practice squad at this point, with as much as they have, right? I don't know. Jamison Crowder potentially could end up on the practice squad. I don't know unless he's going to be on special teams, which he can be, right? He can bring more value to you. But yeah, there's a lot of quantity as far as the receiver goes. But like you said, there's been a talent influx. So back to the draft now. You get Jalen Hyatt. How did you feel about Banks? JMS. What were your thoughts overall, 1 through 7 or 1 through 6 for the rounds? Is how did you feel about this draft as opposed to last year's? Last year's felt like they need a little bit more quantity to replace bodies plus the talent, right? It was a combination where we need more guys to replace some bodies, get rid of some dead weight. This time it was about nobody expected them to make all those 11 or 12 picks they had, right? So it wasn't a surprise to see him. I think he was maybe even giving away picks at some point just to be able to say, you know what, I can't replace everybody. I just drafted like 14, 15 people. I can't keep replacing people every year, right? So
Exactly.
so now you're bringing your solid 6 or 7. How did you feel about this draft?
Oh, I love the draft. I mean, their first three picks, if you look at most mock drafts, most of them had those three players, the top three players, going in round one. So to be able to get them in round one, two, and three is a phenomenal value pick. I can't lie, I was a bit surprised that they traded up one spot to get Deontay Banks because Joey Porter Jr. was there as well.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I didn't grade them
Or
that
if not one,
tightly,
the
but
other, right? Yeah, yeah. If
yeah.
not
So I'm
one, the
like,
other.
you're gonna get one of them. So why not just
Sure.
stay put? But Wink Martindale and Wink we trust.
Oh yeah,
That's the guy who
100%.
won it.
Oh, 100%. That's all I needed to know about this is Wink said he wanted him. I was like, I'm good. I don't care about the trade package. Like that's all I needed to hear. Like all my Giants eggs basket success went into the Wink Martindale hire last year. When he was on board, I felt great about this. I just felt great between experience, scheme, everything. I felt good. And the greatest thing about Wink is, oh well, he'll blitz no matter what. No, I saw him adjust a lot last year. Be patient last year, be smart last year. So this whole moniker of he's gonna blitz and die, I'm not buying that. He definitely sent. Don't get me wrong. He definitely sent players. He definitely was, out there playing the chess games, exotic blitzes, disguises, all that. But he was not blitzing every single play.
Right. It's too smart for that. He's not gonna do it every place so everybody knows it's
Sure.
coming. He's gonna mix it up a bit.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
considering the injuries he dealt with last year, Dory Jackson, um, obviously McKinney, he did as good a job as he could do.
Yeah, absolutely. So
And
the
that's the
deal.
one. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go
The one
go.
thing, if you're a Giant fan, you have to be happy about right now. You have confidence in the GM, coach, quarterback, and the coordinators. Now, when's the last time we could say that? You trust everybody
That's
at
a
that
great
position.
question. That's
You
a great.
know,
I don't think you can. I don't know when's the last time you could. I don't know. That's a really good question. When's the last time I can put all four of those pieces or five pieces and say I trust all those pieces? Because we all loved Eli and we loved Coughlin, but did we all love Kevin Gilbride all the time? Did we really love Kevin Gilbride? I don't know. Nobody liked Perry Fuel. Nobody really liked Perry Fuel. I mean, his defense was dead last all the time. If not for better playmaking players making plays and creating, turnovers and specific down and distance stops, that goes right down the wall. So I don't know. Very interesting. I'm not sure.
yeah, it's been a while. See,
Yeah,
yeah,
it might be in a Corsi name. I don't know. It might be in a Corsi time frame where that comes up. I have no idea. But there you go. Our people do remember. Kevin Kill Drive.
there you go,
It was
right on point.
goodness, man, goodness. Winning Super Bowls allows you to keep your job for longer. So that was like the plus and the minus on both those standpoints. So now training camp comes in. How do you feel about free agency? And before we get into free agency, I'll add a little bit more. There was a Tony deal that was a part of the draft class, and the reason I call it is because of the third round pick from this draft class. How did you feel about the Darren Waller move? Uh, Objectively, I don't know if you ever covered him before. You ever do something on Darren Waller or the Raiders or even the Ravens when he was there. So, what was your thought on this whole Waller move? Were you surprised by it? Were you excited by it? What was your thought?
Oh, I was very shocked. There were rumors that they were going to trade for a wideout, but maybe it might be Brandon Ayuk
Mm-hmm.
or T. Higgins. So to get a tight end like Waller, that wasn't the name I was expecting. I thought maybe Brandon Ayuk or T. Higgins, but you
Sure,
get one of the best tight ends in the league in Waller, which he will be spread out as a wide receiver often in his offense.
sure.
So to get him for a third round pick that's a tremendous tremendous move by Joe Shane, because I think Waller will have 80 receptions, 8 to 10 touchdowns possibly, and he'll probably become the first pass catcher since OBJ in 2018 to have 1,000 receiving yards. I mean,
Yeah,
so now he,
I can see him crossing that mark.
oh, without question. No, I mean, we saw it today. I mean,
He was
everybody
killing
said
them.
he's
Yeah.
uncoverable.
They're feeding him. They're feeding him. I mean, as you should. You didn't get him to not feature him, right? He is your feature pass catching weapon, if you will.
Oh, he's phenomenal. I mean, for McKinney to say, who's a great safety himself, we can't guard this guy. He's uncoverable. To be
Mm.
that big and that fast, it's a huge asset, especially in the red zone.
Speaking of Xavier McKinney, right? You bring up a very interesting name. Xavier McKinney's had an up and down career as a Giant so far, right? His rookie year, I don't know if it was ankle or his knee, he missed like 10 or 11 games, right? He was hurt. Second year, very, very good year. Third year, again, freak accident, but gets hurt. And even before he gets hurt, not having the best year, having an okay year, like a good, solid year, but nothing you're going to be raving about, right? It was like, he's doing all right. He's doing good. What's the expectation for him in year four? Is he back as
Oh, you
candidate
still
guy,
there?
maybe? Yeah, I'm still here.
All right.
So, what's your expectation for this season for McKinney, and is he back?
My gut tells me, he'll have a okay season. I don't think you're going to see him have like the 5 interceptions he had in, what was it,
2
20?
years ago, I believe.
Right. Yeah,
Two
2 years
seasons. He had,
ago.
I believe, he had 6 interceptions 2 seasons ago.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think you're going to see that type of number just because he's in a different position than Week's defense.
Sure.
He's good in coverage. Um, I'll say he might want a price tag that Shane's not going to go. So this is very possibly his last season with the Giants because he's going to see himself as a safety that could put up big numbers, be a ball hawk, get you anywhere between 5 to 7 picks. I personally don't see that in this defense. Hopefully, I'm wrong because they definitely do need a ball hawk in this defense. That's the one of the many things I was missing with the team last year.
Sure.
But he'll probably, because the Giants are pretty deep at safety right now, so they could probably, and they're probably in a good position to move on without him after this season.
So if McKinney's on the field, who's your other safety in your starting defense? Now, obviously, there's a lot of sub packaging, a lot of moving guys in and out. Who would be your guy? Is it Pinnock for you? Is it Belton for you? Who's your guy that's out there with McKinney?
I would say Belton. They got him last year, and we take a guy. What was he? Fourth round pick last
Fourth
year.
round pick. Yep.
Fourth round pick. Right around now is when they expect you to, possibly emerge in the starting lineup.
Sure.
So
And he's healthy. He's healthy as well. So he got nicked up a couple times last year with the clavicle, or not the collarbone, I believe. Sorry. I believe he broke his collarbone, re injured it, had a lot of pain management issues. I think he had surgery done as well this offseason. So health is going to be, of course, a factor in his production.
And also, the players are high on Pinnock. So I remember, I think McKinney was asked, who do you think could take the place of Julian Love? And Pinnock was the first name that came out of his mouth. Another player to watch for who the coaches like is Nick McLeod. He was a safety, but they're converting him to a safety. I'm sorry, he was a corner. They're converting him to a safety because they like safeties that could actually cover like a corner. Because in the passing league, you have to be able to pretty much cover like a corner.
Sure.
So he has a dynamic that could hopefully result in a lot of turnovers. So that's the name to watch out for this summer. But strong safety and left guard are probably going to be the two most intriguing position battles to watch for this summer with the Giants.
Yeah, and don't forget, I believe it's Bobby McCain that they signed
Yes.
as well, and he's coming off a 16 game start, or 16 or 17 with Washington. Also, I mean, that experience, all that helps. So depth is much higher this season than in previous years. That at least if somebody gets hurt, the guy stepping in has got experience to be able to hold down that position, hopefully. And you brought up left guard. So, all off season for a while, I've been looking for a Zudo news. Hearing nothing about his neck. Is the guy healthy? Can't even, because we got nothing from nobody, from him, coaches, nothing, no idea. But training camp starts. He's now put on pup. We don't hear a peep. So for as far as I'm concerned, he's good to go. That left guard spot to me is his to win. Um, he needs to win that spot. I like Bredesen. I actually did like Bredesen last season. I'm a fan of Bredesen. Also got hurt, but the way they at least started today, it looked like Bredesen was rotating snaps at center and guard, so he might be like the first guy off the bench, and Azudu is your left guard. And if we can solidify another position again, that offensive line just gets a little better now that you've brought in a new center. Year two of Neal. We didn't even talk about how we just locked up the left tackle. For the next 7 years. Is it? I believe 7 season as part of his extension.
Well, until
So
2029, I believe.
yeah, yeah. So that's another 7 seasons of Andrew Thomas, which yay, right? I mean that's excellent to get him locked up and on a good deal because he's probably one of the best tackles in the league. So that was a good deal too. So what happens at left guard there? Do you think it's going to be Azudu who takes it? Do you think it's going to be a battle between? Because you said it's going to be a little bit of a battle. Where do you think the battle's taking place?
The battles between Bredesen and Azudu. Now Azudu was their third round pick last year.
Yep.
So when you take a player in the third round as a
There's an
rookie,
expectation. Yep.
right, you expect them to make a significant contribution. In year two, just by their draft status, they have to be ready to be a starter. He's
Sure.
a mauler, which is definitely something that they need on that offensive line. Because the interior offensive line has been a weakness, but now could be a possible strength if you put him in the mix along with John Michael Schmidt. So there's a lot of potential for this offensive line to be vastly better than it's been in previous seasons. But like I said, Bredesen, he's solid, nothing special, but solid and consistent. So that's going to probably be a battle that comes down to the wire. I can see them both getting extensive playing time in the preseason and see who comes out on top.
Sure.
I
So it
did
might be
think it
one of
was
those.
I did think it was interesting though that today on the first series of the first team offense, John Michael Schmidt was not on the field. And I guess that's Dable doing what he does, showing all positions are earned, regardless of your draft status, but all positions are earned. Now
Yeah.
we all know he's going to make the starting lineup, but it's
Yeah.
just
I think he's a
yeah,
day one starter, but yeah, there's going to be that part. I also interpreted that in the sense where they want to get Bredesen comfortable playing center as well, giving him some snaps because if he has to come in, somebody gets hurt, they just want to make sure he gets enough snaps at center. So full agreement with you. There's a process here that the staff likes to work with and the regime likes to work with, and you got to get in where you fit in because again, it's not about you; it's about everybody else as a whole. So speaking again of the offensive line, Evan Neal, what did you think when he was first drafted? What did you think about the rookie year? What's your expectation now going forward?
oh, I love the pick when they got him. He had a so-so first half of the last year, and then he had the knee injury. And when he came back, he declined even further. He was getting off the edge. Getting beat off the edge. Bad feet. Seemed off balance. The good news is all he has to do is look to his teammate Andrew Thomas. He struggled as a rookie in different ways,
Sure.
but he understands what it's like to be a top 10 pick playing for New York, being considered one of the best tackles in the league. So Thomas could be a mentor to him. Neal has also worked on changing his stance, and trying to get his pad level lower. He talked about also positioning his hand lower to help him against defenders. And I believe he was working with, what was it, Willie Anderson, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So I expect him to make huge strides in year two. Now it's more acclimated to the speed and physicality of the NFL. So I expect he'll be better in year two. The hope is he's at least an above average right tackle. Your
Sure.
seventh overall pick.
You kind
You
of
know,
have to be, right? You
yeah,
kind of have to be with that talent pool and that draft status. I would say just the draft status. Also the fact that it was, I would say virtually, but it was a pretty good consensus that he was one of the top guys. So going where he went wasn't really a shock or a surprise. So it's not the lack of talent. I mean, last year I think was his first time playing right tackle since I don't know when. This will be his first time playing back-to-back seasons in the same position since I think high school. So some of that familiarity will absolutely help. But I'm with you. A lot of people have said, and I've probably said it too, is if he's just average, we'll be all right. But I feel like that's setting the bar too low for him. I think you do
Yeah,
have to be above average because, of, like you said, the talent and the fact of where you were picked at that talent. I think even if he ends up being just average, that's kind of like a flop at that point because
unacceptable. Top
yeah,
10.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of setting the bar kind of low. I think last year, if he was just average, people were like, yeah, he's got somewhere to go. He was average, all right, but he'll get better. So yeah, I'm with you. I think above average is the right way to put it. I need you to be a top 15 right tackle. I think a top 15, like 12 to 15 mold would be something more acceptable for him.
Oh, without question. And I did give him a bit of a pass, late in the year, as bad as he was playing, because a sprained knee, even though he was playing, he was sucking it up. He was gutting it out.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
you can't, he didn't trust his knee.
And
So,
he's a big boy. Let's not act like
exactly.
Evan Neal's 4 pounds, man. Evan Neal carry. You know what? I saw a picture a couple weeks ago that LPG had on his thing, and I was like, "Oh, he looked like he lost weight." And LPG said up straight up to me like, "Nah, man, he did not lose any weight. He's huge. It's the way he carries his weight. He's just as big, absolute mammoth." So I thought he looked a little bit slim, but apparently not. Um,
Yeah, six
yeah,
seven carries the weight well.
yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, he's a big boy. So, I mean, I think if you can get those feet going, everything else will kind of fall into place. Because a lot of the times when you saw him get beat, his feet didn't move quick enough. He didn't get out of his stance quick enough. So I think just getting off the line alone, because I saw him recover plenty of times. He was able to recover plenty of times. But you kind of want to get ahead of it instead of always playing in recovery mode. Because guess what? Those guys on the other side are fast and they get paid too.
It's crazy. Someone told me what linemen should do in the off season to help their feet. Play a little soccer. A lot of linemen on the offensive and defensive side that have good feet, they have a soccer background. I'm not saying play it
No, but
as
that does make
as far as
sense as far as
dribbling.
the muscle memory, the movements, the lateral agility from playing and being able to. So that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, if he gets to that above average, there's a potential where again the Giants probably can't say this or haven't been able to say this, but you're going to be potentially locked up in 4 out of 5 spots on your O line. 4 out of 5 spots are pretty much going to be set if people take the next steps they have to take. Um, That brings
And
me to
they're
Glowinski, right? He's on the final year of a deal. It was pretty ugly for Glowinski last year in pass pro, not run blocking. He was a good run blocker, which is kind of what you knew even when you signed him, but you just didn't think the pass pro was going to be that bad as it was. Because, I mean, like the inside was getting wrecked by everybody way more than the outside. It's not even close. The interior of the O line was absolutely struggling. Um, is there a potential where you see Brederson taking over for Glowinski, or is it one of those they're happy with Glowinski? He's set at right guard, his contract will expire, and then they'll figure it out whether through draft, free agency, or promotion within of what's going to happen at right guard. Do you expect Glowinski to man that spot all season?
we hope so, but that's a huge question mark. Like you said, maybe move Bredesen over there. Um, and I'm trying to think. It was his name escapes me right now. Marcus McKeithen.
McKeithen, yep.
McKeithen. Maybe once he's healthy, maybe give him a shot over there. I mean, another player they were high on.
So I thought personally, for me, I thought McKeithen was going to be the who's the other failed third round pick because we have so many of them.
Oh
Uh,
God.
what's his name? The kid from UConn. I'm so blank on his name because he hasn't played in forever. The right tackle they drafted like 99, third round, 3 years ago. I'm just blanking on his name. Somebody finds it in the comments. Throw me his name. Failed right tackle from UConn, coming off injury as well. Shoot.
Yeah, his name escapes me too.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody will put in the chat if they're still awake and paying attention. But I thought McKeithen. There we go. Thank you, Matt
Matt
Perry.
Pert. Matt Pert.
Yeah. So I thought that McKeithen would probably be a swing tackle replacement because I just think he's too large to play guard. He's big. He's like 6'7", 330. He's just big all around. So I thought he was a little bit too big for guard for pad level. That's just, again, personal opinion. But we also forgot that Phillips came in, and Phillips played a lot of meaningful snaps, signed off the waiver wire. So it seems like he's probably going to be the first right tackle off the board. So yeah, McKeithen's going to be coming back from injury. So I'll be very curious to see if they're going to move him inside or not. And you're right, he might be the replacement there or the future there, if at all. So it's going to be very interesting. And then Andrew Thomas, how'd you feel about that deal today? We didn't hear any whispers of this deal. I know everyone's been asking for it and saying, "Hey, listen, let's just lock this guy up because his price is only going to keep going up the way the market's going in his play." So we didn't hear too many rumors, too many excerpts or anything about that conversation. Boom, you wake up today and it's just bang bang deals right now. Joe Shane's just cooking, right? It's just bang bang deals. Gets locked up to a what I would say is a pretty good deal, pretty solid deal for everyone across the board between guaranteed money, locking him up, and having him here for the long term. So how'd you feel about that?
Oh, we knew it was going to happen eventually. Sooner than later. It's probably the second most important position behind quarterback is left tackle, and you have one of the best left tackles. You have to reward them. Getting $67 million guaranteed. That's it goes a long way to show that Shane's going to take care of his players that perform to that elite level. And you have second team All Pro left tackle.
Correct.
He's obviously going to be one of the core members for the team for the next decade plus. So good job by Shane. Get that out the way. And now you can focus on other contracts when the season's over. But we knew it was going to happen. I mean, you get a left tackle like that, you got to pay him. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. Give him his money.
So now remove yourself as the fan part, look at yourself as the objective writer. Within that world and circle, because I'm sure you're either connected to or, converse with your peers in your industry, as most people probably do in their professional lives. What is the outlook this year of the Giants? Just overall, nothing specifically, but last year between Shane taking over, bringing in new talent, the whole Daniel Jones thing, the Saquon Barkley thing, is his team going to do anything? The playoff run thing, the win thing, did they overachieve success thing? Where does this franchise and team stand today amongst that industry and world? What are some of the opinions you're hearing, and what are your thoughts on those?
The most common opinion is the roster is better than last year. The team could be better, but have a worse record, just because of the schedule alone.
Sure.
I mean, last year they caught a break playing the AFC South and the NFC North, which, were two terrible divisions. I still believe they will be a playoff team. I don't think they're ready to overtake either. I don't think they're ready to overtake the Eagles as the division champs yet.
Sure. And that's fair.
I'm hoping they could get second over the Cowboys. But yeah, I still think their ceiling for this season would be the divisional playoff round as they did last year.
Sure. A wild card team.
Right. A wild card team, win the wild card and, losing the divisional round.
Sure.
Because they're at least I think 2 or 3 playmakers away from being legit Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah. I'm not there yet. As much as the fan in me wants to, right? Because I'm a fan, so of course I want them to win the Super Bowl every year. But practically speaking, there's still questions in places where with Super Bowl contenders you don't have those questions, but there's still questions here. I definitely don't. I think they're much closer to the Cowboys than they are the Pigeons, because that roster and team is stacked. But yeah, I mean, I've said it before. I'll say it again. Week 1, I fully expect them to beat Dallas. Fully expect them to. And they need to improve within the division, right? You can't have the scenario where you tie in the division. Like you shouldn't tie. I hate that regardless. But tying in the division is even kind of worse in my opinion, because it doesn't hurt you in the standings when you get to the end, but it doesn't help you depending on either, right? It's a weird thing that happens here and there, and people go, "What are you supposed to do now?" So they're gonna have to definitely improve markedly in their division. They got to. I mean, 3-3's got to be the bar for me, right? 3-3's got to be at the very least. You got to go 3-3, and you should be able to beat each one of those teams at least once. That's got to be the bar.
At minimum, you can't keep going 0-4 against the Cowboys and Eagles. You know?
And then just hoping that Washington continues to suck and you can just beat it, because last year you ended up tying, right? And then you lost on that. You lost on that one field goal the season before, right? The fake offsides. Like, I mean, It ain't
And now Washington, they have Eric Bieniemy, so that's it's not a given you're going to beat them. I mean, you'll be
sure.
favorites, but he's going to add some creativity to that offense. But yeah, you have to beat the Eagles and Cowboys at least once. That's why I think Week One will set the tone for the entire season. You know, you made all these upgrades at you got your linebacker via free agency, your speed receiver, your corner, and you got a safety. You got Waller. If you lose to Dallas after all these upgrades, it'll be a downer. I mean, obviously it's only one game, but it's like we made all these upgrades, people got paid, and we can't beat Dallas at home.
Yeah,
You know, if the game was
they
on the
spent money
road,
too. Yeah, they spent
yeah,
money too. It's not a scenario where they went empty pockets. They made some moves this year, bringing Okereke, sorry, bringing him
okay,
in as a free agent, adding a young cover corner. They're adding pieces to get better speed. The name of the game was speed for them, right? They added speed. They got big up front. I mean, they can shuffle their D tackles literally every play, and the drop off should not be significant, just because of the level of talent they brought on. Right, between Ashawn and even Nacho, you're bringing two Super Bowl winning defensive tackles that know what to do, how to play. And then they just added another D tackle whose name I'm forgetting, Brandon Bryant, I believe, who's barely played any snaps, but seen a little bit of tape on him. He's another one who could penetrate, but also hold blocks, shed blocks. So they're they're really getting into that line because, as you know, last year we got wrecked in the run, no matter who was playing. It doesn't matter if it was, Dexter was on the field or Cat was on the field. We were just getting gashed no matter what. So from that standpoint, they're
yeah, they got
really,
gassed, especially in
yeah,
that playoff game.
almost every week I think there were 3 or 4 games where it was like, it's all right, but for the most part they were getting wrecked pretty badly. Um,
Yeah,
but
and
yeah,
also reason why they should beat Dallas or should be much better. Kayvon Thibodeau should have a big year too. I mean, he
yeah,
started last year. He started off with a sprained knee, so that slowed him down. Even though when he came back, we figure him one edge, Aziz at the other. You know, between those two, at minimum, they should have 20 sacks combined. At minimum,
I
you know,
would love. I mean, it's a rarity where you get that kind of a combination between two, where you can get both double digits, or like you said, combined, right? 12,
yeah,
8,
combined
whatever the
20.
case
Yeah,
may be. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to be, but yeah, I need both of them. I mean, health is the game. It's the name of this game all the time is health, and that's one of the personnel department that kind of wears me down a little bit, just because I just don't think there's anything behind them. Like you have Aziz, you have Kayvon, then what? One of them gets hurt, who and where. It's not O'Shane Zimenez. He sucks. All right. They signed him as a body, cheap, no system. That's all I could come up with. I got no other reason to bring him back because his job is to be a pass rush specialist, and he doesn't get to the quarterback. So that doesn't really do much for me. I love Hattie. One day he will
love
unblock me
Hattie,
on
the energy
Twitter.
he brings.
One day he will unblock me on Twitter. But again, he's not the guy you're bringing to rush the passer. He's setting the edge, right? He's not the pure specialist. And then what do you have? The undrafted kid, Baldonado. We don't know what he's going to be able to do. Tom and Fox, kind of, sort of, here and there. Are they going to use Micah McFadden a little bit more in that role potentially to get to the quarterback? Because, Wink said he's seen him grow tremendously while he'll be in a fight with Beavers for the starting inside linebacker spot. So I'm not sure what we're doing at pass rush so far. I would still love to happily sign Justin Houston. He's still out there, still
That'll be a
available.
huge plus.
He's 34, but still vastly productive. Very,
Yeah,
very productive for his age.
just
Um,
use him as a situational pass rusher.
that's all he's got to do. On third down, pin your ear back, go do this one specific job, and don't worry about anything else.
Because as it stands right now, after Aziz and Kayvon, I think if we ask Wink Martindale, he'll say we'll probably be able to scheme our way to get more sacks, and that sounds good in theory, and it may happen. But we also need some players that know how to wrestle quarterback, you know, who
Yeah,
can excel at that level, you
yeah.
know.
Because otherwise, you're expecting the back end to carry for that half step or that step to help on the other way. Which again, I think Adore is really good, very serviceable. But Banks is a rookie. I don't. I mean, rookie corners. That's a tough place to be, regardless of where you pick. That's a very tough place to be. So you always expect, the bumps and bruises. I'm hoping he's an all-pro out of the gates like everyone else, but the chances of that are not exactly high. but really, really hoping for good production there on his end to help, because everybody helps everybody. But as far as the Dallas thing goes, I mean, they added Stephon Gilmore, they added Brandon Cook, so they're making their own moves. But I really think we should be able to beat them. I'm like I said, if we don't beat them week one, I'm gonna have to take a step back and rethink all my thoughts at this point because that should be a winnable game. I'm not saying we're gonna blow them out. I'm not saying it's not gonna be tight that we might just pull out, but it should be a winnable game. I just feel
Yeah,
like it should be a winnable game.
like 23-20, beat them by a field goal.
Yeah,
You know,
sure. Yeah, something like that. But I'm not expecting anything crazy, but definitely a winnable game. Dak Prescott probably had one of his worst years. I was like the king of pick sixes last year, threw like 6, 7, or 8 of them. I don't know, it was a lot. So yeah, definitely need to step up in the division. That alone should help get you to the playoffs, keep you in that mix, continue to close that gap a little bit. And then there's a lot on Daniel Jones' shoulders, right? You don't get that kind of a bag or that kind of money, and the expectation lowers. Money and expectation go hand in hand in this industry. When you make a lot of money, you better produce like you're making a lot of money. So even though his contract was written well, still got a lot of money. So there's going to be a lot on him to, go out there and perform and hold it down. What were your feelings on Daniel Jones from inception to today? From the point when he was drafted to today, how did you feel about it? Again, objectively, take the fan part out. You're covering the draft. You got to cover this for this team. What's the thought process there?
when they drafted him, I was like, what? Like, are you kidding me? I was actually in the Giants media room, and it was actually Jordan Renan. He actually got the information before they made the pick live on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, the pick is Daniel Jones, and I am not kidding.
Yeah.
And I'm still like, oh, let me actually see it before I truly believe it. And sure enough, a minute or two later, bam, they made it official that Daniel Jones. And, you think about Duke as far as football goes. I mean, you're like, really, whatever? Like, Duke, are you serious?
Yep.
But then you try to look and see, okay, maybe this guy has potential. And he did show potential in his first start, leading that big comeback against Tampa
Sure.
Bay.
Tampa Bay. Yeah, absolutely.
But
It was quite a debut. We were just like, oh my God.
yeah, I mean, I was not a fan of Daniel Jones when they picked him. I say
Sure.
stick it out with Eli another year, and the 2020 draft class quarterbacks was much better than the 2019. So I'm like, ride it out with Eli for another year, maybe get a veteran backup. But yeah, I was not a fan. But hey, he had a tough first 3 years. I actually thought going into last year, Tyrod Taylor may supplant him as a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, he proved everybody wrong. So you have to give him credit. He wasn't phenomenal, but he played smart football. After that end zone interception in week one, it seemed like a light bulb went out after Dable,
Shoot him out.
Shoot him out, yeah. Next drive, he led a touchdown. So you have to give him credit. Again, 15 touchdowns, 5 interceptions is average at best.
Sure.
Just
Well,
have to hope.
I would say on the interception side, it's definitely way more elite than average. But on the touchdown side, yeah, there's going to be, again, there's now more expectation, not just because you got paid, but guess what? Evan Neal year 2, there's an expectation you need to step it up. Azudu year 2, you need to step it up. Now we have a center who's supposed to hold all this together. We're adding weapons in Darren Waller, Jalen High, right? Now we're making your life better and easier for you to be able to produce. So it's not just on you now, but it's still in your hand to deliver it to these different aspects, deliver it to these pieces.
Yeah, how does he handle prosperity? I mean, last year was really no pressure on him because, again, many people thought Tyrod Taylor was going to supplant him.
Sure.
But now you got your money, you have your weapons, so there's no excuses for you to have a subpar season. You're expected now to play as a top 10 quarterback.
Sure.
So you have to hope he keeps on ascending into developing into that type of quarterback. And you just have to hope that last year wasn't an aberration. It's a signal of things to come, for the future.
Who's the player you're most looking forward to watching this season?
Ooh, this season. To be honest with you, I'm always a defensive guy, at heart. And I like pass
rushers. You grew up in that era too, right? So, I mean, that's just inherently in you. You grew up in the era where, smash mouth defensive Giants football was all about the defense.
Yeah, Lawrence Taylor, Carl Banks, Leonard Marshall.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Even in the '90s, I mean, Jesse Armstead, you still had hitters out there on that defense, regardless.
Oh, and of course Strahan and my niece's favorite giant OC Umayura.
Nice.
Miss that guy. Um, yeah, he was always nice to them at the team hotel. But the guy I'm most looking forward to seeing this year, honestly, is Kayvon Thibodeau because he was a fifth, the fifth overall pick. I want to see if he can develop into becoming an elite pass rusher where offenses have to keep him in mind, and he puts fear in opposing offenses where they have to game plan to stop him. Because we really haven't had a dominant pass rusher since JPP in 2011. As far as an elite level, Marcus Golden had a couple of good years, but I'm talking about Pro Bowl worthy, All Pro mention.
Sure.
It's been over a decade, and the Giants are always at their best. The history of the franchise when they have elite pass rushers. So I want to see if he could take a huge leap in year two. I think there's reason to be optimistic because again, he came into last season, with a sprained knee. Actually, obviously I'm not an athlete, but I sprained my knee in April, and it didn't start feeling right till about 2 weeks ago. So,
Sure, there you go.
yeah,
And he sprained his MCL in training camp, missed time, came in, and he's not 100%, but he's good enough to go, so he wants to get on the field type scenario. So, I mean, I think we're all looking forward to Kayvon. Kid just has the it factor. Now he needs to be able to put it on in the field. And like I said, if all holds true about Strahan mentoring him, hopefully that puts an assistance too on how he sees the game, all that kind of stuff. Who is the player that has the most pressure going into this season?
the most pressure is Daniel Jones
Yeah,
because again, as we mentioned, you get paid that handsomely. Your receiving core is much better than it was a season ago.
sure.
So now you have to deliver. You know, if Daniel Jones reverts back to what he was 2 or 3 years ago, I mean, it'd be a humongous downfall. It's like, was
What
last year just
happened?
a fluke?
Of course.
So it's always Daniel Jones. I think he'll perform well because he seems confident. Now he's had success. He
Well,
has
he's
a
got real
coach.
coaching, right? He's got real
Precisely.
coaching, and that's not a shot at the previous coaching staff per se. I'm not knocking that those coaches weren't coaches, but what Jason Garrett's running compared to today, uh, Joe Judge. I mean, I don't even know what to say with that one. I mean, you got fooled, Brian. That's all it was. You got fooled. You bit. You sunk. That's what that was, really. And I mean, great person from everything we hear, but that has nothing to do with coaching. But generally, yeah, you're right. It's just the quarterback generally has the most pressure. But I'd be really, really surprised at a regression, if you will. I think the interceptions will go up just because they'll be taking more shots deeper. So that's just a natural progression of that as well, where he might go to 8 now or 9 instead of 5, which I'm fine with because then that'll automatically push some of your 15s up to your 20s as well on the other end because you're going to hit some of those as well. Um, what 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 would be the disappointment for you when the season ends? Forget record, forget everything. You sit down, the season's over. What makes you go, this was disappointing, and what makes you go, this was a success?
As far as disappointment, obviously Daniel Jones takes a setback, which we don't think will happen, but it could
Sure.
happen.
Yeah, anything's possible.
Um, Evan Neal doesn't progress as we hope.
That's a good one. That would be a tough one to have to sit there on.
Yeah, if he's like the right tackle Eric Flowers, we are in trouble.
Sure.
So he's definitely one of the biggest components to the team having success. So definitely Evan Neal, and that's pretty much it as far as the offense goes. I'm concerned about Deontay Banks because again, like I say, he's a rookie. He's going to get tested early against top elite receivers.
Yeah, I mean the NFC East does have playmakers, so I mean between him and Adori, there's work to be done.
Oh, without question. Even outside the division, they play the 49ers. You got Debo, Ayuk. Then you have Seattle.
And
Metcalf.
then Seattle's stacked right now at the receiver position.
Yeah, and you're going to see them week 4. So it's
Yeah, home game though, so at least it won't
yeah,
be in Seattle this time. But still, I mean, they're stacked. They drafted wide receiver as well, and like I said, they got Metcalf, they got Lockett, so they're pretty heavy over there.
and also another disappointment be if the second year players do not develop, if they play at the same level as it did as rookies, that would be a huge disappointment.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
as far as success, make the playoffs again. They haven't made the playoffs in back-to-back years since '07, '08.
Hmm.
It's been a long time. I mean,
So would it be a success if they made the playoffs and lost that initial game? Would that count as success? But or is it you got to get there, you got to win one again, and that's success? And again, this is subjective measurement. Like everyone has their own measurement of what success is going to be. So just curious what yours would be.
if they lose a heartbreaker like on a field goal in wild card round, so be it. If they were to get blown out like 35-10,
Sure.
it'd be a big disappointment. I mean, if you really look at the NFC, I actually brought up some teams: Eagles, Cowboys, Lions, 49ers, Seahawks, Saints. I think those are the only teams you could say might be better than the Giants. I'm just saying the Saints because somebody in the NFC South has to win. So I really don't see how they shouldn't make the playoffs if they stay relatively healthy.
Sure.
So
Yeah, I would say the NFC is pretty wide open, right? If you take one or two of the top guys or teams out, it's still kind of open, especially with that wild card having that extra spot. Kind of how you made it last year, that extra spot type scenario. So yeah, I mean, I think I'd be pretty disappointed if they don't hit the playoffs. Not because I just need it from last year, which I do. That's definitely part of it, but objectively because there's enough talent for them to do so. If you can
personally,
achieve what you did last year with less talent, adding more talent shouldn't move you backwards. It should move you forwards because now everyone is in year 2 of something. Just like you brought up, when's the last time you could say about the GM, and when's the last time the Giants could say they had 2 good coordinators come back and stay and be able to work in year 2 of something with the same cast? Can't remember the last time that's happened. So Kafka in year 2, Dayball installing in year 2, Wink in year 2. That's just as exciting as the players understanding what's expected of them, how to, where to be, and all that. So that'd be disappointing. And again, maybe I'm being too subjective, but objectively, I think, yeah, if it's not playoffs, I think I'll be disappointed.
yeah, because you don't want to be like 2017 where there was promise going into the season after they made the playoffs in
Yeah, sure.
2016.
And it was a one and done type thing.
Yeah, and the bottom just fell out. You want to keep that natural progression. Always tell people before the '86 Giants, there was the 1984 Giants and '85. They made the playoffs, won a playoff game here and there. Then in '86, they're ready to take that next level.
Sure. It's
You
it's
can
a
say,
progression, right? There's a
right,
progression involved. And now we want to see said progression. Even if you did, overachieve or were ahead of the schedule, fine. Keep
right.
going. Keep going if that's where you were. Keep going.
Yeah, because you can't go up, down, up, down, up, down. I
Yeah,
mean, and for one, you got a lot of young guys on rookie contracts. Eventually those guys are going to get paid. People are going to leave. So to keep that core intact, you have to start winning. Take advantage of the
absolutely.
situation.
Yeah,
And like we said, who knows what happened with Saquon? He might be with the team next year. I think he will, but you never know. I
yeah.
mean, you have one of the best playmakers in the league. You have to take advantage of it. And that's why making the playoffs, if somebody gets hot, 2 or 3 players, who knows? You might wind up in the Super Bowl.
You
That's what
never
really
know.
happened to the 2011 team. I mean, Eli, JPP, Cruz, they all had career seasons that year. They
Yeah,
pretty much carried the team throughout the regular season. And Knicks, especially Knicks in the playoffs, he was
phenomenal.
phenomenal.
Yeah,
It was literally a tragedy to me when he got hurt the following year
yeah.
because I think Knicks, Eli, and Cruz would have been special for years to come. I think they would have had at least another run in them, but
We're just not fortunate. I think injuries have been a part of this franchise as long as I can remember, where we just don't get that stability without it, which kind of, gives so much more credence to Eli the individual about just stability and ability and all that. So I'm gonna ask you one last question. I don't know if you can answer this objectively, but objectively speaking, the Eli Manning debate rages on and probably forever will, regardless of what happens or doesn't happen with Eli Manning. Objectively, as a writer, just try your best to remove your Giants fandom for a moment.
All right.
Eli Manning, Hall of Famer, yes, no, why?
Yes, because when he retired, he was top 10 in passing yards, touchdowns, and an 8-4 playoff record, which is impressive. I'll admit though, he has the weirdest career I've probably ever seen in a quarterback. I mean, you only won the playoff game in 2 seasons in 2007, 2011. Outside that, you didn't win a playoff game. Um, Led the league in interceptions 3 times. But who he beat in the Super Bowl matters big time. You beat Brady twice. You engineered 2 game-winning drives. And like I said, when he retired, he was top 10 in yards and passing. I know people look at his 500 record, regular season record, but hey, he's a Hall of Famer in my book.
Yeah,
I understand the 117 and 117 regular season record. People can say, that's the definition of average.
sure.
But if you look at the team, the second half of his career, they had subpar teams, especially in 2015. The defense, they have people playing defense that wouldn't make most teams practice squads.
If that,
You
if
know,
that,
yeah.
if that.
So I mean, those losing years were not his fault. But yeah, he's a Hall of Famer in
That's
my book.
a part of that is where I bring in Jerry Reese too. That Jerry Reese was just swinging for the fences at some point. I think Jerry Reese as a GM today would do better than he did because he would take all those tweeners that people are aiming for today anyway. So Jerry Reese might have been actually a little bit ahead of his time in the whole football athlete combo, but at that time it wasn't working at all. So today he might be a little bit more successful. But yeah, I mean, you go look at that draft history for the Giants and where are the second contracts coming from? Like, where are they even happening? Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth round. So, where are they even coming from? They just weren't taking place. So yeah, so Eli Manning, fair amount of losses, and like you said, 117, 117. But his 117 wins are tied with Joe Montana for 13th all time. It's not as if he won four. It's still a lot. I'm just curious again in that section of the professionals of the writing world, when people have to go cast their vote, what would be the reasons for the Eli? What would be the reasons against him? And ultimately, do you think he's first ballot? Because ultimately, I think he's first ballot.
Oh, he'll definitely be first ballot because, for one, there won't be a quarterback in the first year eligibility that can compare with Eli's numbers. I mean, Roethlisberger and Rivers retired a year or two after Eli.
Correct.
So there's no competition at quarterback position because sometimes the people that vote, they don't want to put more than 2 people at a certain position. So that's going to bode well for Eli's chance of being a first-time ballot Hall of Famer. Um, and again, based on the history, I don't believe there's a quarterback that when they retired was in the top 10 of multiple categories and a multiple Super Bowl winner that's not in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
So based on that criteria, how could you leave him out?
Yeah. And Mike Greenberg probably said it best when he was like, you can't tell the history of the game without him. Not even because of the one Super Bowl, but the two. I mean, one's always a fluke, fine. How do you fluke it twice? How do you fluke anything twice? In the game of football, a game of inches, how do you fluke it twice? So you can't. I just don't think you can. So it's always curious to see that for those who have the ability to make a vote and have an impact on players, objectively, what is the criteria they're looking at? So you've been able to share some of your criteria of what you're looking at. I think based on that, credentials, statistics, like I said, the most important thing, in the biggest moments of the biggest games, you beat arguably the best quarterback of all time. And I'll say arguably because everyone has their quarterback of an era and all this stuff. So, there's never really just one GOAT. There's era GOATs in sports, generally speaking. But to beat Brady twice and one where we probably had no business being there.
And it's the plays you're going to remember. The Tyree
Yeah.
catch,
Sure. The
Uh,
Manningham catch, which is probably the best catch of all time in a Super Bowl. I don't care what anyone says.
oh no, not
Best throw,
probable.
best throw and catch.
Best throw and
Best throw and
catch.
catch. Yeah.
I mean, if you look at it, you're surprised he even attempted that pass. Really, I mean, no one else was like more open. I mean, if it wasn't perfect,
It
it
wasn't
may have been
happening.
intercepted.
Yep.
And put it right there. And Manningham could not drop that pass. He had to catch it. If he dropped that pass to
I
the
had
bench,
Justin, yeah, I had Justin Pennick on last week too, and he said the same thing. He just wasn't allowed to. That's you just can't drop that one. That's not the one. That's it. That rule. You're not allowed to. You're just not allowed to at that point.
you can't. It's literally the perfect pass. And people forget, like Vince Wilfork, what he had his hand like in Eli's face. So for him to even get that pass off is amazing. To have it with that precision and that accuracy.
Right. I mean, the Tyree thing was luck. Right. There was definitely luck involved. Even Eli's admitted so. I saw a jersey. I chucked it. Right. Fine. He's even admitted it to being that so. The Manningham throw is literally pure skill. That throw, progression, everything to the catch, just beauty of the game at that point, which is why to me it's the best one. Objectively, even aside, go ahead and find me a better one. Some people say the Roethlisberger San Antonio Holmes catch is also one of them. Fair, fair as a good throw and catch, but that wasn't going 30, 40 to the sideline in double coverage.
Exactly, with a hand in your face. You
Yeah,
know, I mean, yeah, you factor in everything again. Being objective,
sure.
that's the best pass I ever seen.
Yeah,
I think Eli's a Hall of Famer, but I would never say he's a top 10 quarterback. But I'm just being honest. That was the best
sure.
pass I ever seen to this day. To this
Yeah.
day.
How much of Eli's fault is his contemporaries, or does that matter at all? This is a general conversation because I'm just curious. Does it one of those scenarios for Eli is, man, it sucks to be you that your contemporaries were also so good at the time you were playing? Rodgers, Breeze, Brady, you know, Cam Newton was towards the end of his career when Cam was really ascending, but he had like a dominant run. Michael Vick was having a run. Favre was still tail end, but kind of in there. Does that matter at all for a player when you could be, well, he was never top 10? For me, Eli probably at his best was probably like a top five, top seven guy. Probably at his best top five, top seven. And that's again because Brady, Breeze, Rodgers, Peyton Manning, even those guys were just always there anyway. So to supplement them is hard to do anyway. So how much does that hurt a guy like that? Or is it the converse? Well, you just need to be better than those guys, and that's why it hurts you.
I mean, it hurts him when you rank him against some of those quarterbacks, because, I mean, let's be honest, he played 16 years, but made the Pro Bowl 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he ever got a MVP vote.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at most of his contemporaries they have, and most of them actually
2011,
won.
2011, if the record was better, he gets one. He doesn't. I mean, it's because the 9-7, that team wins 10, maybe 11 games. He gets votes. He gets way more attention because what he did that season was unreal from a quarterback standpoint, records, all that. But that was really the team record that I think kind of put him a little bit below the pendulum in those accolades, if you will. But that 2011 was almost an MVP season, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, that comeback against Dallas at Dallas, I forgot. I think it was
It was
Des
like
Bryant scored.
yeah, it was like 3 minutes and they were down like 11 or 14, whatever it was.
And that was like one of the first times I was actually going to turn off the game. I don't know if I was going to walk to a local bar and drink my sorrow or go to sleep, but
Yeah.
for whatever reason, I kept the game on and engineered a comeback. He threw a touchdown to Jake Ballard, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. And then Brandon Jacobs put one in too.
Yeah, and
And then
JPP at
JPP
the
had
end.
the block. Yeah. And then you play them again in week 17 and you demolished them just a little bit. It got close at the end, but you jump out, I think it was 21-0. Jump out and then they creeped back in, but then it got put down. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was one of those things where the team itself just wasn't really that good, but to be able to elevate players around you. And here's a question I'll ask you because these three are always going to be forever linked, right? This will probably be the last one I ask you because we got things to do. I appreciate you spending your time. Rivers, Roethlisberger, Eli. If I take a step back, I think it's fair to say that between the three, Eli did the most with the least, right?
That's fair.
Roethlisberger throughout his career always had a top 10 O line, always had a top 10 defense. Rivers throughout his career, Hall of Fame players, top 10. I mean, his defense was up and down too, so absolutely. But on offense, always had a good line, always had great weapons. He had LaDainian Tomlinson, man. Like, I mean, he had weapons that were elite.
Antonio Gates, one of the best tight ends ever.
Antonio Antonio Gates. So to still come out with two Super Bowls that you contribute, you weren't, sitting on the sidelines watching. You contributed heavily to that. That is part of the conversation for me is how you're supposed to elevate players around you, right? And I think somebody put it here too, exception of OBJ, who are the elite receivers he ever played with? He had Plaxico for a few years, then the injury happened, free agent. Outside of that, two more at the tail end, right? Tail end, you got a guy, but really, where were the weapons at? Shockey was there. Shockey wasn't around long either, right? So again,
Yeah, like
historically,
4 or 5
Giants
years
don't.
they go. Yeah.
Yeah, we have this 4 or 5 year window, and guys are just gone. But to still kind of churn over, rotate, next weapon comes in, boom, we got it. Next weapon comes in, boom, we got it. To still be able to do that, um, that to me is pretty telling in itself as part of that story or as part of the narrative or conversation or description of said player's impact.
Right. And also you have to keep in mind he never threw a player under the bus. He never showed frustration when the line was horrible. He always
Nothing
complimentary,
off
never
the
said
field. Nothing off the field.
precisely. And that goes a long way, especially in this media market.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably one of the reasons they wanted him instead of Roethlisberger or Rivers. They knew he could handle, this market. Uh, but yeah, he really didn't have elite receivers for a long period of time. Monty Toomer was at the tail end, like the
Yep.
the peak. Amani Toomer was like 2002, 2003, like a year or two before Eli got there. Plaxico, he had him for 3.5 years, and
Yep.
you know what happened?
Steve Smith 1 year. Victor Cruz 3.5, 4, 3.5, 4 before his patellar tendon got blown out in
Yeah.
Philly.
And if you go back to 2013, Cruz didn't finish out the season. I forgot what happened. I
No.
think he had a knee injury, but he
Yeah.
didn't play in the season finale. Hakeem Nicks we talked about,
Injuries.
and like little stuff, even like Martellus Bennett. He had him for 1 year via free agency. He was a
And it was
good
a
tight
great
end.
1 year. It was a
Yeah,
great addition. But then he got a big contract and he had to go. But he was a very good weapon to have. There you go. See, this is the rinse and repeat. Is just kind of like what Jay is saying that we've been saying. He never had like consistency for the weapons to build that longevity that a lot of people did. Whereas, like you said, LaDainian Tomlinson, Antonio Gates, on Roethlisberger's side, you still had Heinz Ward and company. You still had guys that were still producing for a while, and then they were replaced. But when they were replaced, you still had that next guy for 5, 6, 7. Antonio Brown for a long time. It wasn't like 2 years and out, 2 years and out, 3 years and out.
yeah, precisely. And also, like you said, Rivers and Roethlisberger had Hall of Fame offensive linemen too.
Sure.
You know,
I think it was Dan Schneider who put out this tweet a while ago.
oh,
I
Dan's
think
great.
for the last between 2011 and I think Eli's last season, and this was just a PFF metric, and I don't live and die by it. It's just a metric. There's a lot of metrics. It's just one of the metrics, but I don't think Eli ever had a pass blocking offensive line ranked higher than 29th in like a 7 year span.
I believe you're right because actually, I believe in 2011 when they won it all, I
They
remember
were like
Dan saying,
32nd or 31st. They were terrible. They were
"Yeah."
terrible. Yeah,
I'm thinking to myself, "Wow, they were that bad?" Because Eli produced like almost had 5,000 yards.
sure.
I'm like, "Wow, they're that bad," but he still managed to put up those numbers.
Yeah, and win a
I
Super
mean,
Bowl 9-7 with a defense that particularly was bad that year too, and a run game was I think that was ranked dead last. So a lot of these categories were dead last, but to still will your way through and beat some legit competition. They weren't playing like subpar competition in the playoffs. You beat Aaron Rodgers, you beat Tom Brady. That's big time.
yeah, because you have to keep in mind, and there are two Super Bowl victories, there are two runs. They beat three teams, I believe, each time that
The
at
one
least
seed.
13 wins in the regular
Yeah.
season.
They,
Because
they had Dallas.
'07, Dallas,
The Rodgers was 15 win Packers.
yeah,
That
well,
was
even
the one
'07,
seed.
the '07 Packers 13-3.
There
For
you go.
fun.
Even Brett Favre,
Yeah.
Rodgers, they beat the undefeated Patriots. Um, Dallas won 12 or 13 in that '07.
13.
They were
They
13 to
were
3
the
too.
one
They were 13
seed.
to 3.
Them and
And
the Pirates had the same record. Yeah.
yeah, so again, there you go. Not easy for as far as level of competition goes.
Very difficult. Very, very difficult. You know,
So Jason, I appreciate you having on. Good to see your perspective. Just get to know not only a Giants fan in the community and space, but one who actually, for a living, has to again try to be objective about it. That's got to be kind of cool, but maybe even frustrating because if I was in that position, I'd probably second guess my comments 3 or 4 times. Just be like, I wonder if this is too biased or unbiased. Like, how does that come across? Maybe that'll just be me overthinking it. You've been doing it long enough. I'm sure you've gotten it down. But definitely appreciate you having on. Appreciate everybody who's stuck on to have on, and we'll definitely hopefully get to link up. Tell everybody a little bit about where they can see your work, where they can catch you, social media and otherwise.
Twitter or X now, I guess it's called, at Jason K. Leach. And I write for Sports Not. It's sports in NAUT. And hopefully, because I'm actually working on a fiction book. And believe it or not, the Giants are involved in the end of it. It's still in the early process. But hopefully, it'll be out sometime next year. Fingers crossed.
Sure.
But I could say, without giving it away, if you're a Giants fan and or hate the Eagles, you'll like the ending, and I'll just leave it at that.
Sounds
But
perfect.
yeah, it's yeah, hopefully comes to fruition sometime next year.
Oh, awesome, man. I'll definitely be in touch with you during the season. We'll definitely catch up. And if I believe you're going to training camp on Sunday. I think I am also going on Sunday. I have to check. If not, I'll definitely hit you up and we'll link up.
Yeah, I'll
So
definitely be there Sunday. Because I had to take a step back after COVID. I've
sure,
been working a full time job, so I'm not with the team as I used to be prior to COVID.
sure.
But yeah, I'll definitely be there Sunday, and at least one day next week, perhaps two.
All right, perfect, man. Jason, I want to thank you for your time. I'm always humbled and grateful for people taking out their time to just come kick and have a conversation, especially when it comes to the Giants. So let's hope we have a great season, man. Just want to thank you again. Appreciate your time for coming on, man.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate you having me. And I'll end it like this: Week 1, the Giants will beat the Cowboys. In the words of Paul Heyman, that's not a prediction. That is a spoiler. They will start the year 1-0.
I love the Paul Heyman reference. That's an excellent way to go, man. Love that. Thanks a lot, Jason, man. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Take
All
care.
right, thank you. Have a great one.